So I want you to picture Cole Porter. Like, what do you see in your mind's eye?
Oh, it's always the tuxedo. The impeccably tailored
Oh,
tuxedo.
right. The tuxedo, the gleaming cigarette holder clamped between his teeth. You see him in these velvet-draped salons of Paris in the 1920s, just mingling with aristocrats, expatriates, and, the absolute highest echelons of the lost generation.
Just casually playing his latest compositions at a grand piano while the champagne flows.
Exactly. You picture this sophisticated Broadway lyricist, the absolute master of the English language who could, brilliantly and effortlessly rhyme Mahatma Gandhi with Napoleon Brandy.
And make it sound like it was the most inevitable pairing in the history of the written word.
Totally. You picture pure, unadulterated glamour.
Which is, the ultimate mythology of the cosmopolitan artist, the effortless sparkling wit,
Right.
the man who rented out literal Venetian palaces just to float through the Grand Canals for the summer. But the truth of how he became that icon, the actual genesis of that sophistication, it does not begin in a Parisian salon.
No, it really doesn't. It begins somewhere incredibly quiet, profoundly unlikely, and entirely unglamorous.
Yeah, quite the opposite of Paris.
It begins in the stifling, dusty, deeply practical turn of the 20th century farm town of Peru, Indiana.
Right up Indiana.
Yeah. You have to imagine the environment for a second. It's dust, trains, agriculture, and absolute unforgiving Midwestern practicality.
Which is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to episode 55 of Porter-Pedia, our ongoing exploration into the life, the times, and the exquisite handiwork of Cole Porter.
So glad to be here for episode 55.
And today, our mission is to investigate the architect behind the icon. We are dedicating this entire analysis to Cole's relationship with the original Kate, his mother, Kate Porter.
The OG Kate.
Exactly. And to do this, we are drawing our research today from 5 leading biographies on Cole Porter, as well as his own extensive collection of personal letters.
Which are just fascinating to read, by the way.
They really are. And we want to understand not just who they were to each other, but how she quite literally constructed his reality.
Because when you look at the source material, a very clear, undeniable truth emerges. Cole Porter didn't just happen.
Right, it wasn't an accident.
No. He didn't just drift into becoming America's most sophisticated songwriter by some accident of fate or geography. He became that icon because his mother absolutely insisted that he could be one.
She willed it into existence.
She really did. Without her sheer will, without her active, deliberate architecture of his early life, the world might never have had anything goes.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah.
But to understand Kate, you first have to understand the battlefield she was operating on.
Oh, battlefield is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, you have to place yourself inside this house in Peru, Indiana, at the turn of the century. You have 3 adults and 1 little boy, and the psychological weight in those rooms must have been absolutely suffocating.
I can't even imagine.
It was a house defined by violently clashing expectations.
Well, let's look at the players. On one side, you have Cole's father, Samuel Porter, and the biographies describe Samuel as this gentle, cultured man. He was a local druggist who genuinely loved poetry and music.
But, and there's a big but here.
Yeah, a massive but. Within the power structure of this specific family, Samuel essentially faded entirely into the background.
He was completely overshadowed.
He really was. He played a remarkably secondary, almost marginal role in family affairs. He largely allowed his wife to dominate the decisions concerning their son.
Which, created a massive power vacuum.
Yeah.
And that vacuum was filled by an absolute clash of the titans. You have Cole's mother, Kate, representing imagination, art, and determination.
And then you have his grandfather, James Omar Cole.
Yes. And you have to picture James Omar Cole not just as like a grumpy Midwestern grandpa.
No, he's not just sitting on the porch whittling.
Not at all. He was a towering, formidable patriarch. He was one of the richest men in all of Indiana.
Wow.
He was a self-made mining magnate who built this massive, sprawling empire of mines and real estate.
And with that kind of self-made industrial wealth in that era comes a very specific, incredibly rigid worldview. I mean, he literally dug his fortune out of the dirt and the rock.
Right.
For James Omar Cole, success meant one thing. It meant discipline, ruthless business sense, and extreme practicality.
And he had very vocal opinions about what constituted a masculine career.
Oh, I'm sure he did. And let me guess, music was not on that list.
Music was absolutely not on that list.
Sure.
He considered it utterly frivolous.
Naturally.
So he laid down a terrifying ultimatum for the family. He explicitly stated his grand plan for his grandson. He demanded that the boy must study law and someday manage the vast family fortune.
Which is a lot of pressure for a kid.
It's immense. And he didn't just, suggest this over Sunday dinner. He weaponized his wealth. He stated very clearly, if the boy becomes a lawyer, I'll leave him my money. If he does not, he gets nothing.
Ugh. And imagine the gravity of that. That is the anvil hanging over Cole's entire childhood.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just abstract talk about wills and inheritances behind closed doors, right?
No, unfortunately not.
The grandfather actively used this threat against a small child. There is a deeply traumatic incident that Cole remembered vividly his entire life, an episode that really reveals the family tension with terrifying clarity.
The buggy rides.
The buggy rides. It is a profound psychological moment.
It's so dark.
It absolutely breaks my heart. So I want you listening to just imagine you are just 8 years old. Your towering, intimidating, massively wealthy grandfather takes you out for a buggy ride through the bleak Indiana countryside.
Sounds innocent enough at first.
Right. But then you get to the crest of a hill, the wind is blowing, and he stops the horse. The grandfather takes his driving whip, points it out toward the horizon at this gray, depressing stone building, and he looks down at you, an 8-year-old boy, and says, "That, Cole, is the place you will end up."
He was pointing at the county poorhouse.
It's just psychological terror.
It really is.
The grandfather is looking at this sensitive, artistic kid who likes the piano, and he is essentially saying, your dreams are going to leave you destitute and starving in that miserable building.
And because, of course, if an adult tells you that you're going to end up in the poorhouse, you believe them.
Especially at 8 years old.
Yeah.
You internalize that fear. And Cole, shaken to his absolute core by this brutal prophecy, would run home in tears.
Naturally.
And here's where the story shifts. He runs to his mother, and Kate doesn't just pat him on the head.
Right. She doesn't just say, oh, Grandpa's just grumpy. He means well.
Exactly. She hugs him, and with pure indignation, she tells him, Cole, don't listen to a thing he says.
And that moment, that is the bedrock of everything Cole Porter would become.
Yeah.
When we look at the psychology of this, children naturally absorb the expectations of the authority figures around them. An 8-year-old does not possess the cognitive defense mechanisms to brush off a billionaire grandfather's prophecy of doom.
Yeah.
By hugging him and explicitly telling him not to listen, Kate provided what we can think of as borrowed confidence.
Borrowed confidence, I like that.
She didn't merely comfort him. She actively, forcefully rejected the patriarch's prediction. She was ensuring that the dominant voice in Cole's head was her voice of belief, rather than the grandfather's voice of doubt.
Okay, but I have to stop you there because I'm putting myself in Kate's shoes and I'm putting myself in the shoes of anyone listening right now. Is it not incredibly dangerous to tell a kid to blatantly ignore a powerful patriarch?
Well, it's definitely a risk.
I mean, she is actively encouraging defiance against the man who literally funds their entire existence. The grandfather holds all the cards. If he cuts them off, they are ruined. Isn't her reaction reckless?
In a vacuum, yeah, perhaps encouraging a child to ignore the family elder is risky.
Yeah.
But if we examine the mechanics of what was actually happening, we see why Kate's intervention wasn't just helpful, it was psychologically vital.
Okay, how so?
You have to realize, the grandfather wasn't offering constructive criticism about Cole's piano playing. He was threatening to extinguish the boy's authentic identity.
Right, it was total erasure.
He was exerting a gravitational pull so strong it threatened to pull Cole into a life of soul-crushing ledgers and mining reports. In cases where a child's artistic spirit or unique interest is facing familial annihilation, a counterbalance is absolutely necessary. She had to be a human firewall.
A human firewall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without Kate acting as that protective barrier against the pressure to pursue, conventional success, Cole's creativity would not have survived his childhood.
A human firewall. I love that so much. She was blocking the malware of his grandfather's crushing pragmatism.
That's a great way to put it.
And for anyone listening who is raising a child or mentoring a young person, you often have to serve this exact same function.
You really do.
You have to protect their unconventional interests from the harsh judgments of peers or the standardized expectations of an educational system, or even well-meaning relatives who think art is a waste of time. You have to believe in the child before the world does, and you have to protect their identity against external doubt. Which brings us to our first real lessons from her parenting, right?
Precisely, because Kate recognized that if she didn't shield his identity, James Omar Cole would pave right over it. But what is so remarkable about Kate is that she didn't stop at defense.
She didn't.
She didn't just block the grandfather's threats, say don't listen to him, and then leave it at that. She immediately went on the offense.
She really went on the offense. She transitioned from emotional support to financial and environmental reinforcement.
Tangible investments.
Exactly. Kate herself was a very capable amateur pianist, so when Cole was just 6 years old, she began formally teaching him to play the piano in their parlor.
And soon after, she added violin lessons.
Right. And very quickly, music completely replaced typical childhood games for him. While other kids in turn-of-the-century Peru were out playing in the dirt streets, Cole was inside, rigorously practicing and composing.
And he wasn't just noodling around on the keys.
No, he was serious.
By the time he was 10 years old, he wrote a fully realized piano piece. He titled it Song of the Birds, and he dedicated it to his mother.
Wow, at 10.
Yeah. Now, the manuscript for this piece is incredibly revealing because it contains these small narrative descriptions written above the musical phrases in Cole's childish handwriting. It serves as a coded narrative of their lives.
Oh, the descriptions are just fascinating. He wrote phrases like, mother's cooing, the young one's learning to sing, one bird falls from the nest, the bird is found, and they fly away.
And the biographies note that the musical composition itself was hardly a masterpiece. I mean, he was 10 after all.
Right, right.
But the symbolism is unmistakable. The story of the mother bird protecting and finding the fallen bird before they fly away, that is the exact dynamic of Cole and Kate.
It's so touching.
It reads like a coded love letter to the woman who was protecting him from the harshness of his grandfather's world. He was literally processing his family dynamics through musical notation.
It gives you chills. And how does Kate respond to this? She doesn't just pin it to the wall and say, "Good job, sweetie."
No, she escalates.
She does. The very next year, when Cole is 11, he writes another piece called Bobolink Waltz. And Kate takes this piece, and at her own personal expense, she pays a local printer to produce 100 professional copies of the sheet music, which she then distributes to friends and relatives.
This is a massive escalation in her strategy. Think about the psychological weight of the Bobolink Waltz publication for an 11-year-old.
Huge.
She didn't just give him a pat on the back. She opened her wallet and funded his first publishing contract. She acted as his patron.
It totally transforms a childhood hobby into a professional identity.
Exactly. It showed Cole that his work mattered in the real world. It gave him the physical, tactile experience of holding his own published work in his hands, seeing his name in print.
Oh, there's nothing like that feeling.
He could look at himself not just as a boy who likes the piano, but as a working composer. The insight we can draw here is that talent grows exponentially faster when it is treated as real, tangible, and worthy of investment early on. She was signaling to him that his art had value.
Okay, I am entirely with you on the sheet music. That is brilliant, supportive parenting. But then she takes her strategy to a level that is so audacious, so aggressive, I can barely wrap my mind around it.
You're talking about the orchestra.
We have to talk about the Marian Conservatory Orchestra incident because to me, this borders on madness.
It is certainly one of the most dramatic moments of his early life.
It's insane.
Kate hired an entire professional orchestra from the Marian Conservatory and had them travel to Peru, Indiana, for the sole purpose of allowing young Cole to perform a violin solo in front of the town.
I just want you, listening right now, to pause and picture the absolute absurdity of this. You live in a provincial, dusty Midwestern town, and one of the local moms hires a literal orchestra to back up her kid playing the violin.
It's a massive flex.
It is mind-boggling. And honestly, the result was a bit of a disaster recently.
Yeah, it didn't go over terribly well.
The townspeople sitting in the audience were totally unimpressed. His classmates were actively mocking him. So I have to push back on Kate here. How is publicly humiliating your child a good strategy?
It's a very fair question.
I can't even imagine the sheer burning embarrassment Cole must have felt standing there, a little boy trying to play his solo while his peers are snickering and pointing at him. It sounds like a complete parenting failure.
It sounds incredibly painful, yes. And it raises a vital question. Why did Kate push through that? Why risk the humiliation of her son?
Yeah, why?
Well, biographers suggest she was completely unfazed by the mocking. She didn't care about the snickering classmates because she understood the profound psychological mechanism of environmental conditioning.
Environmental conditioning.
Right. Children tend to become what their environment consistently suggests they are.
So, by putting him on a stage with a professional orchestra, she was fundamentally altering his baseline of reality.
Precisely. She wasn't trying to impress the farmers of Peru, Indiana.
Right, they weren't her target audience.
The message she was sending to Cole wasn't necessarily You are better than these kids in the audience. The message was, your work belongs in the world, on a stage, backed by professionals, regardless of local opinion.
Wow.
She was structuring his reality to reinforce his identity as a public musician. She was creating an environment where performing was expected, where taking his art seriously was the absolute baseline.
She was recalibrating what normal looked like for him.
Yes. And for anyone guiding a young person today, the scale doesn't have to be a hired orchestra.
Right. Please don't hire an orchestra.
Exactly. It could be encouraging a child to enter a science fair, or submit a poem to a magazine, or set up a stand to sell their crafts. The specific activity matters less than the overarching message you are sending, which is, your abilities deserve public recognition, and you shouldn't shrink yourself to fit a small room.
Your work belongs in the world. That completely reframes the orchestra incident for me. She was inoculating him against the opinions of people who didn't matter.
She really was.
But of course, because Kate had fundamentally altered his baseline expectation with stunts like the orchestra, the provincial boundaries of Peru, Indiana could no longer contain his ambition.
No, it was too small.
She had outgrown the town for him. The dusty streets, the mocking classmates, the overbearing grandfather, it was just too small, which forced her to make her most drastic move, yet getting him out.
And this transition marks a major, decisive victory for Kate over her father, the patriarch James Omar Cole.
Finally, a win against the grandpa.
In 1905, she orchestrated Cole's escape from the Midwest. She successfully sent him east to attend Worcester Academy, which was an elite boarding school in Massachusetts.
The geography is so crucial here. Moving from Indiana to Massachusetts in 1905 wasn't just a trip, it was like moving to a different planet.
Completely different world.
It was a massive win against the provincial expectations of their hometown. She physically removed him from his grandfather's sphere of influence. But what is so brilliant about Kate is that she didn't just put him on a train, wave goodbye at the station, and consider her job done. She knew that her support had to evolve.
Yes. She didn't abandon her role as his architect. She just changed her methods.
Right.
Her correspondence from this period is incredibly revealing. She started writing regularly to the headmaster of Worcester Academy, a man named Daniel Webster Abercrombie.
And what was she saying to him?
Well, Kate was actively managing Cole's early career from afar by building a network of sympathetic adults who would treat his talent seriously.
She recruited co-conspirators.
She absolutely did.
And Headmaster Abercrombie completely fell under the Porter spell. The letters they exchanged are amazing. Abercrombie writes to Kate, assuring her that he has personally ensured Cole has access to a school piano so he can practice his compositions.
Which is pretty rare for a headmaster to be that involved.
It is. But the sheer affection in these letters is stunning. Abercrombie tells Kate that Cole is a piece of sunshine and writes, "I love him as if he were my own son."
Wow.
He even admitted to Kate that he actively dreaded the day Cole would have to graduate.
What is so fascinating about Abercrombie's devotion is that it reflects the exact atmosphere that Kate had purposefully cultivated.
Yeah, she primed the pump.
She was showing us that as a child grows, parental support has to evolve from direct supervision to strategic guidance. She wasn't sitting next to him on the piano bench anymore holding his hand.
Right, she couldn't be.
Instead, she was ensuring the adults in his new environment understood his immense value and nurtured his creativity just as she had. She stayed deeply involved, constructing the scaffolding for his success from hundreds of miles away.
And that scaffolding held him up beautifully. Cole graduates from Worcester Academy and goes to Yale University in 1909.
A big step.
A huge step. And instantly, he becomes a massive campus celebrity. He's writing hundreds of songs for student productions. He actually wrote some of Yale's most famous fight songs that the students still sing today.
Bulldog, right.
Exactly. He is living the exact life Kate envisioned for him.
He was thriving. He was the center of attention, wildly creative, and socially dominant. But, as we mentioned earlier, the shadow of the grandfather's wealth and his ultimatum was incredibly long.
Oh, right, Grandpa Cole.
James Omar Cole had not forgotten his demand that the boys study law. He was still holding the purse strings, and eventually the pressure catches up with Cole.
Right. After experiencing all this musical success at Yale, Cole actually bows to the pressure. He attempts to comply with his grandfather's grand design, and he enrolls in Harvard Law School.
It was a doomed stint from the very first day.
Totally doomed. But I want you to think about what that must have been like for Kate. She had spent his entire life protecting him from that exact fate.
Decades of work.
She had fought her father, invested in Cole's music, sent him east, and built his confidence. And yet, She had to sit back in Indiana and watch her son walk through the doors of Harvard Law.
That must have been agonizing.
She had to let him bump his head against his grandfather's dream before he could fully claim his own.
It is one of the hardest things any parent or mentor has to do. She had to recognize that she could no longer protect him from every mistake.
Yeah.
It illustrates how support must evolve from explicitly directing a child's life to guiding a young adult's choices, and sometimes, painfully, letting them make the wrong choice so they can find their way back on their own terms.
Because if she forced him, it would backfire.
Exactly. If she had forbidden him from going to Harvard Law, he might have always wondered if he could have pleased his grandfather. He had to experience the misery of it himself to realize it wasn't his life.
And find his way back he did. The gravitational pull of music simply proved too strong. He couldn't force himself to care about torts and contracts.
Not at all.
He eventually transferred out of Harvard Law and into Harvard's music program. He definitively, finally chose art over the family fortune.
A huge turning point.
And one of the biographies notes that you can just imagine Kate watching this development with quiet, immense satisfaction. Her son had finally permanently chosen the path she knew he was meant for all along.
And that definitive choice launched him into the stratosphere.
It really did.
He leaves school, he leaves the Midwest, and he becomes the global superstar we all picture today. In 1919, he marries Linda Lee Thomas, a wealthy, glamorous divorcee, and they embark on a lifestyle that is almost hard to comprehend in its luxury.
Oh, the luxury is insane. They moved through the most glamorous circles of Europe and America. They lived in Paris, Venice, and New York.
Rented palaces.
Literally. Their parties became legendary, attended by royalty and the intellectual elite. Cole was writing the sophisticated, brilliant songs that would completely define American musical theater. He was at the absolute pinnacle of high society.
But here is where the story takes a fascinating turn. You would think that this glittering international superstar lifestyle would fundamentally change him. You would assume he would leave his provincial roots and his Midwestern mother entirely in the dust.
A lot of people do.
But it didn't change his core emotional anchor at all. Despite the massive distance, the oceans between them, the glamorous aristocrats he was partying with, Cole maintained steady, constant contact with his mother back in Peru, Indiana.
He really never let go of that tether. He wrote to her constantly. He always invited her to his Broadway premieres, making sure she had the best seats in the house.
Front row, always.
He would send her lavish gifts from his travels all around the world. And his letters to her would so often end with the simple, beautifully grounded phrase, "Love from us both," referring to him and Linda. He never outgrew his need for her approval.
Which leads us to one of the most revealing and frankly hilarious anecdotes from our exploration today. The birthday telegram.
Oh, this is my absolute favorite piece of history we've uncovered.
He's so good.
I want you to picture Cole Porter in Europe. He is likely surrounded by the most sophisticated, fast-talking, brilliant people in the world. He's sipping champagne, he's working on a brilliant new operetta, he's living the absolute dream. And suddenly, he has this horrible, sinking realization he forgot his mother's birthday.
He absolutely panics. The great, unflappable Cole Porter loses his nerve completely.
He rushes to cable her a message, and because he feels so guilty, and because he is Cole Porter, a man who deals in grand theatricality, he sends this massive, extravagant, deeply emotional, highly sentimental cable, just pouring out his love for her.
Just paragraphs of apology.
Yes, he asks how she is, he begs her forgiveness, he practically throws himself at her feet via telegraph. It is a sweeping theatrical gesture of affection and apology.
Then Kate Porter, sitting back in her house in Peru, Indiana, receives this long, breathless, wildly sentimental telegram from her glamorous son in Europe.
Right.
And the very next day, she replies with a telegram of her own. She goes to the telegraph office and she sends a message that contains exactly one word.
Okay. It is the most brilliant thing I have ever heard. He sends a novel of swirling, desperate emotion, and she sends back, "Okay."
It is hilarious,
Yeah.
but if we analyze the psychology of that single word, it tells us everything about their dynamic.
It really does.
We can unpack the brilliant humor of that okay telegram, but it also highlights how Kate managed his adult success. She believed in his genius from day one, but she completely refused to indulge in excessive sentimentality.
She didn't buy into the drama.
No, she didn't let him get away with the theatrics. She celebrated his success, but she maintained complete emotional balance. She kept the superstar entirely grounded.
It's so true. It's like Telegram is a perfectly written Cole Porter lyric. Think about his style, the exact thing that made him famous. It is always this dry, witty understatement that completely undercuts an extravagant emotional gesture.
Oh, that's a great point.
He literally got his sophisticated timing, his lyrical brevity straight from his Midwestern mother. She undercut his drama with a single word.
And that connects to a broader truth about their relationship. Kate wasn't stunned by his Broadway success. She wasn't swooning over his telegrams from Europe or falling over herself because he was famous.
No, she expected it.
She treated him like a musical genius since he was 6 years old, playing the piano in her parlor. She expected greatness from him, and because she expected it, greatness felt normal and attainable to Cole.
Right.
He grew up believing that phenomenal success wasn't a fantasy, it was simply the baseline expectation of his life.
If you treat a child like they are destined for greatness, when greatness arrives, they know exactly how to handle it. And that dynamic, that profound grounding, lasted for the rest of her life. He never lost that devotion to her.
No, he didn't.
But eventually, the story takes a tragic turn. In the early 1950s, Cole entered a devastating period of loss. In the summer of 1952, Kate passed away.
It was a monumental, shattering loss for him. 2 years later, in 1954, his wife Linda died as well, along with his very close friend Howard Sturgis.
Just loss after loss.
But the loss of Kate was particularly profound. Because for Cole, losing his mother didn't just mean losing a parent. It meant losing his very first audience.
Yeah.
It meant losing the invisible architect of his entire life. The woman who built the stage he was standing on was gone.
When you look back at the entirety of his life, from the dusty roads of Indiana to the bright lights of Broadway, it is so clear that the glittering myth of Cole Porter, the tuxedos, the Venetian canals, the clever rhymes, it obscures a much simpler, much deeper truth about where his sophistication actually came from.
It does. As we bring our analysis in this 55th episode of Porter-Pedia to a close, we have to look past the mythology.
You do.
The most cosmopolitan songwriter of the 20th century didn't just emerge from the ether. He didn't invent himself out of thin air in a Paris salon. He was carefully, deliberately constructed by a mother who recognized very early on that her son did not belong entirely to Peru, Indiana.
She saw the future he was meant for, and she built the bridge to get him there, plank by plank.
Exactly. When we review the biographies and the letters, we see that Kate did 3 world-changing things for him.
Let's summarize those.
First, she encouraged his creativity when others, including his powerful grandfather and his mocking classmates, dismissed it. She was his human firewall.
I still love that phrase.
Second, she financed his earliest works, making his talent tangible and professional from a young age by printing his music and hiring that orchestra.
The crazy orchestra.
And third, she protected his artistic ambition long enough for it to bloom, shielding him from the crushing practicality of his family's expectations until he was strong enough to defend it himself.
Yeah.
The world eventually celebrated his genius. Millions of people listened to his songs, but she was the very first person to truly listen.
She listened when he was just an 8-year-old boy running from a buggy ride crying about the poorhouse, and she told him not to listen to the doubt.
She really did.
So as we wrap up today's exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought, something to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
What's the thought?
We spend so much time in our culture celebrating the genius of the artist, the one sitting at the piano, the one writing the brilliant lyrics, the one standing in the spotlight taking the bow.
Right, the person on the stage.
But what if the greatest, most difficult act of creativity isn't the art itself? What if the highest form of creativity is actually the act of designing the environment?
Oh, that's powerful.
What if it's being the invisible architect like Kate Porter who constructs the safety, the belief, and the expectation that makes another human being brave enough to create?
Yeah, the one building the stage.
Exactly. So look around your own life right now. Whose environment are you shaping? Whose doubts are you silencing? And what are you giving them the confidence to build?
That is the true legacy of Kate Porter. It is a powerful reminder that before the glamour, before the Broadway lights, before the standing ovations, there has to be someone who simply believes the journey is possible.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 55 of Porter-Pedia. We hope this exploration has given you as much to think about as it gave us.
It's been quite a journey.
Usually when we talk about a person's life, we expect it to be a solo journey, a self-made ascent to the top of the mountain. But sometimes when you look closely enough, you realize the summit was reached because someone else built the stairs. Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and we will see you on the next one.